Freddy's feeling boxed in. This is your look at the Mezco Toyz Burst a Box, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger. Mezco's Burst a Box is a pop culture infused twist on one of the most beloved classic toys, the Jack in the Box. The Nightmare on Elm Street Burst a Box features Freddy Krueger, the dream-haunting Elm Street slasher. This fully functioning Jack in the Box is approximately 14 inches when popped. The Burst a Box features a detailed head sculpt and clothed spring body, all encased in a tin music box. Designed after his appearance in the film, Freddy features a devilish grin and wears his infamous striped sweater with removable fedora that he can wear when popped out of his tin. Before we get a closer look at Freddy Krueger, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the Burst-a-Box Freddy actually stands. Now, there is something that really concerns me about this particular box. More so, it's the fact that you have to remove the fedora before he goes inside the box. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but because he is currently wearing his fedoras, it's going to, of course, increase the height of this particular release, resulting in the Burst-a-Box Freddy Krueger actually being taller than some of the others we've looked at before. He actually stands 14.8 inches in height. And switch that to centimeters, then you're looking at Burst-a-Box Freddy being 37.6 centimeters in height. And to show you how Freddy stacks up, we'll just slide him over for 1 second, and we'll bring in another one that we just recently had a look at. This is the Pennywise Burst-a-Box. You'll see that they're roughly about the same heights, but you could give a little extra clearance to Freddy simply just because he does have that fedora. The fedora, like I said, is removable, so we'll go ahead and take that off right now. And once that is taken off, he's about the same height as Pennywise. I might give just a little bit more to Pennywise simply just because he's got that additional bit of hair on the top of his head. But they're roughly about the same size to one another. And the boxes themselves are actually quite identical to one another, even though, of course, they feature different slashers on the front and on the sides. As Freddy takes a bit of a slumber, why don't we first have a look at the box itself, and then we'll go ahead and pop him up so you guys can see what it actually looks like. The box itself is, it's okay. It's generally okay. One of the biggest problems I have with this box is short of the top, and the top is really the only thing that's different about it. They use Part 2 Freddy, as you can see there, the more witch-like looking Freddy, but they don't call it Nightmare on Elm Street 2. All the rest of the box is sort of just with a very underwhelming looking Freddy. It's almost like somebody came up and spotted him in a grocery store, said, Freddy, 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 can we take your picture? And then he quickly went into a very awkward, scary pose as somebody posed along with him. I mean, it's not the greatest of photos, and I have to say, of all the images I'm sure they had at their disposal, why would they go with this particular Freddy? It looks extremely awkward. He looks extremely awkward, and I can't even place what movie this is from. I mean, in some ways, I'm guessing it's probably Freddy versus Jason, judging by what I can guess to be maybe the darker stripes of his sweater. But, like, it's a really laughable-looking image, and they use it everywhere. Every single side of this, short of just the top, is making use of this Freddy Krueger face. One thing that's rather interesting, though, is we bring in the Pennywise. We'll just bring the camera down a little bit there. If you look at the two boxes, let's spin them around so they're facing the same way. One thing I've noticed also with the both boxes is that they use the same splatter effect on the outer edges. Now, one thing that at least had to Pennywise's credit was he did have different faces all the way around, or different images all the way around. Freddy doesn't have that. He's using literally that same awkward, met you in the grocery store sort of pose that he's in. At least this one does have some different things going for it. But if you look at them, and I'll just pick them up so you guys can actually see here, the splatter effect that outlines each of the images is exactly the same. So they literally just took that same splatter effect and then just decide whatever image that they want on the inside. But the images, the borders are exactly the same. They're identical to one another, which is perfectly fine. I mean, I don't expect them to have a different splatter effect for every single Burst-a-Box. But I would think at the very least, they could have gone a little more creative with Freddy's faces, and certainly not use, if they're going to use this awkward face, use it only for one side of the box. Don't literally use it for every single side, because it just looks terrible. I mean, it looks almost like this one is slightly different than this one right here, but they're all terrible looking images. And if anything, I would have really enjoyed more so, I think, if they had used poster art. Now, they did use that somewhat with the Pennywise release. There was, of course, more promotional images and stuff that they used, but a lot of it were like poster pieces that they used. I don't really know what they did specifically with Freddy, but it's definitely, if you ask me, a very disappointing presentation. Because if you're not going to be putting these with their popped up look, and you're simply just displaying them in their boxes, like I'm going to be doing most likely in my collection, they're really, like this one specifically, this one is good. This one I feel is a real letdown with how they've delivered it. Now, of course, to get the box popped, all you're really going to have to do is take the crank and turn it clockwise. And as you're turning it, you'll know you're turning it the right way, because if you turn it the opposite way, it doesn't make any music whatsoever. That's a little tip there. But you just turn it, and it plays Pop Goes the Weasel. It's the exact same clip, same audio that they've used with both the Chucky as well as the Pennywise that we've had a look at. I feel like this also could have been an opportunity where they could have incorporated, like, you know, the 1-2 Freddy's Coming for You. Maybe they could have used that as the audio clip for this. But I guess the idea was that they were supposed to make it closer to a Jack in the Box. Generally, Jack in the Boxes tend to go by Pop Goes the Weasel. So I guess that's one of the reasons why they did that. So all you're really going to do is you're going to crank it, crank it, crank it. And then when it gets that familiar end, what it's going to do is it's going to pull this latch back, releasing, of course, the tin door, because this is all a tin box, and Freddy's going to pop up. Again, that's a good looking image. That image, it's not so much. But anyways, you're going to just continue to crank it. And out comes Freddy Krueger. Now, Freddy Krueger popped out, looks good. The only downside to it, as you probably already know, and what I just mentioned earlier in this review, is this fedora can't be something that goes on the figure when he's inside the box. You have to take this off every single time. I mean, a couple of things that go wrong with that is having this as a separate piece guarantees that you're probably going to lose this. You're going to put this somewhere because you're going to have your Freddy popped back down, and then you're not going to remember where you put the fedora. The fedora, by the way, is a very dense plastic, very, very dense plastic. The other downside to it as well is if somebody sees this currently on your shelf, and they go to pop Freddy down, not knowing that you're supposed to take the fedora off, you have to quickly rush over there to tell them the fedora does not fit on the figure's head when you're putting him back in the box. I'll show you guys more about that in a second. Picking this up, though, and let's get a closer look at Freddy Krueger's face. It looks very much like the MDS Freddy that we had a look at not too long ago. In fact, I would almost even feel like it's an identical face sculpt. It's detailed nice, and it does have a real stylized design and look to it. It's got some good coloring going for it as well. But I feel like if you already have the MDS version, you're pretty much getting this exact same Freddy head sculpt, just, of course, on top of a spring body. This is, yes, of course, all a spring body. The striping of the sweaters is very much familiar as well to the 1/12 Freddy that we had a look at not too long ago, where essentially all they've done is they just printed on the green on top of the existing red. I guess it's more passable here on the Jack in the Box version of him, but I was really disappointed about that on the 1/12 release because I just felt like the printed on green really looked like they could have done something better and different to it. For a Jack in the Box release, I'm not going to be as too much the stickler for the fact that they just slapped on the green stripes. Could they have done a little bit more? Possibly, yes. But the fact that this is really only a cording inside the box, I'm not going to be too disappointed by that. By the way, again, we'll go ahead and put the fedora onto Freddy's head, just like that. And I want to show you guys, when you are putting it down, you'll definitely see right away, it does not fit inside the box. And I don't know what they would have done differently. I mean, they could technically have shrunken the size of Freddy's head to accommodate the fedora. Because if you look at it, when you're pushing it down, the fedora only just barely grazes it. Like you can see, there's just only, it looks more like the length of the fedora is what the thing that doesn't clear the opening. And again, the idea of having to take this off every single time you decide that, well, for yourself, if you want to actually put Freddy Krueger inside of it, it's a bit disappointing, again, that you have to do it every single time you pop this guy back in the box. When you are putting him back in the box, you're literally just going to be according him back in, folding him in, and there's no locking mechanism. As soon as I literally let go of this, he's going to spring back up. So then you have to, of course, close the door shut and just snap it on place like this. Now, this Freddy had the same issue as the Chucky. You'll remember the Chucky did not close on me. So what I ended up doing, I found a little way around this. With the Pennywise, let me just see if I can actually hold it. Well, you know what? I won't hold it for the time being. If you continue to spring it, that's where the latch goes. Now, once that latch is in place, it'll hold the box. If you had difficulty with your Chucky, or if you've had any difficulty with any of these burst the boxes, the best thing I would say is cycle through the song again. Even if the jack in the box is already popped back up, cycle through the entire song again until that latch swings back and latches forward, and then you can close the door. And that's more than enough, of course, to keep Freddy Krueger inside, self-contained inside this tin box. And of course, when the time comes again to pop Freddy out of his box, you can either already have him popped up, or you can wait until one of your friends comes over to check your current collection, have them wander their way over to your collection of burst of boxes, and have them turn the dial themselves. Oh, what does this thing do? And you can just say, oh, I'm not really sure. It's actually the first time I've ever even seen this. Wait a minute, isn't this in your collection? And sit back and enjoy while they turn the crank and eventually popping out Freddy Krueger. And then, of course, being that you'll have to have the fedora somewhere off to the side of the shelf, you have to quickly run then over, put the hat back on Freddy Krueger, and say, what do you think? That's my burst the box Freddy Krueger. Overall, this one is a good-looking box. I mean, I like the head sculpt on Freddy, if you like those stylized designs that Mezco puts out. I think I might like the Pennywise just a little bit more. Not only is Pennywise a real detailed-looking head sculpt, this one does have it as well, but he also has a better-looking tin. When, again, you put him next to Freddy's, the Freddy box and the pictures that they chose really doesn't make any sense to me. This is the best that they had to choose from. We've gotten Freddy's before. We've gotten many different Freddys from Mezco Toyz. They have enough images at their disposal. Why is this the image that they decided to use? Not only for the front of the tin, but it seems every side of the tin except for the very top latch. As a jack-in-the-box, Freddy does a good enough job at doing it. I mean, if you crank the dial and you get to the end of Pop Goes the Weasel, he does live up to what he's expected to do. He pops out of the box and surprises the person that's coming over and had no idea. How would you not have any idea that there's something inside that box? Especially if you're cranking that dial and it's playing Pop Goes the Weasel. You know, sooner or later, something's going to be popping out. So he does a good enough job of popping out. He didn't have the issues that I had with Chucky, so he gets points for that. He has things, of course, that could be fixed. I mean, the striping on the sweater has always been a big problem. Was a bigger problem, I think, to the 112 Freddy, because he was a higher-end figure. He was a lot more expensive. And I think because of that, the expectation level was a lot higher on him. He's doing the same thing for the Jack-in-the-Box variety of the Burst-the-Box Freddy. He does have to paint it on stripes. I don't suspect somebody would be there crocheting. Is it crocheting a sweater? Making a sweater from scratch? I don't think somebody's doing that for every single Burst-the-Box Freddy. So, yes, it makes more sense just to paint the stripes on his sweater, paint them on green, even though it does look like painted on stripes. The head sculpt does look like the one that we got from the MDS release of Freddy, even right down to the same looking fedora. My big problem with this is the fact that the fedora has to be something that's separate. I mean, it loses its appeal if you have to pop it out of the box, put the fedora on, then take the fedora off, put him back in the box, and rinse and repeat. They should have maybe shrunk the head down, or they could have also used the Worm Freddy from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. That would have been an ideal solution to the problem. Just don't give Freddy Krueger the hats. Just have the hat completely removable, and instead make him the Worm Freddy. So that's one way around it. The biggest also issue is the fact that if you don't have Freddy Krueger popped out of the box all the time, and you're only just looking at him as the tin is pretty underwhelming, admittingly. The images that they ended up using and choosing for Freddy, I have to kind of sit back and think, was this like a last minute, well, we have to get this box made, and we have to get the production, the prototype produced. Let's just grab this image. Or did they actually sit around the table and decide for themselves, of all the images that they had in front of them, this was the best one we had to go with? Again, I think with a lot of these Burst-the-Box cases, it would have been fun to have actual posters of the movies on the outside panels. Maybe on the front of the box, front of the tin, it could be the poster. And then on the side, it could be promo images from that particular movie. Instead, what we get here is awkward Freddy Krueger walking down, picking up cereal, and somebody says, "Hey, it's Freddy Krueger," and he has to awkwardly sort of pose and do a selfie with a fan. That's what I'm looking at when I'm looking at this tin. It's definitely not one of the better images that they had to go with. And the fact that Pennywise gets so many different images on each side, and Freddy has the same image on all of them. Even though I think the longer portrait one is slightly different, it's still awkward Freddy. And nobody wants awkward Freddy on their Bursta boxes. But that's ultimately what we ended up getting. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of the Bursta box Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Krueger. And if you've managed to pick up any of these for yourself, and if you have any of them in your collection. Also, if you're new to the channel and liking all the content you're seeing, consider the idea of hitting the subscribe button down below. Turn the bell notification on, and of course, stay tuned to this channel Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when new videos will be popping up. Oh, I see what I did there. Popping up. It's a Bursta box review. I'm here all day. Lots of stuff, guys, coming your way. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.